Hey everybody, Becky here. This is our second part of the Midnight in Salem episode. It was getting a little bit long. So this is part 2 of that episode, which is also posted. So if you haven't listened to part 1, go back and listen to that first, and then come back and start part 2.
And we switched to Frank's point of view, so now we get to play as Frank Hardy.
Yes, listen, this is so horrible. It should be the most fun part of the game, getting to play as Frank and Joe, honestly, in my opinion. And it's the most boring. It's the most boring. It's the most tedious. So yeah, we switched to Frank's perspective, and remember Joe talked about having that ghost hunting equipment before, so that's what they are. They're in the cemetery trying to hunt ghosts, and Joe is like explaining to us how we have to use this machine and like walk around the cemetery and try to like detect ghosts. Whatever. It's boring, it's annoying, and using the ghost hunting equipment is very challenging. I didn't find it as challenging this time, but it's still not fun.
To be clear, it's not a challenging puzzle.
No.
What you need to do is very straightforward in how to solve it. It's just like...
There's literally 2 buttons to press.
Yeah, you're just like turning this wheel, but every time you turn the wheel, it turns like 90 degrees and you want to turn it 1 degree. But then like every time you press it, it just like spins around like crazy. And it's like, no, I just want to go back a little bit, but it won't let you just like do minor adjustments like that. So that's why it's difficult, not that it's challenging.
Yeah. I didn't have that problem this time. It was very easy for me to navigate it, and I was able to turn it just fine. So I don't know if maybe it was because I was doing it on my laptop previously, and now I'm on my bigger computer, and so maybe that's why maybe it does perform better. Or if they actually did update the game for that to operate better. But I had an easier time with it this time.
Argo Fun was struggling when I watched it. And, easy enough for me. I just fast forwarded about like 30 minutes by the time he'd solved it. We were good. But
anyway, so that's what we do. But eventually, after investigating the cemetery, we find that there's like this machine up in the tree, and it's actually a motion detector, which is weird. It's like, why would somebody have a motion detector set up in this cemetery? This is another thing to me. It's like, if you have ever been to Salem, it's like cemeteries are a big deal there, right? Like there's like cemetery tours. It's a very big deal. And so the concept of like just like a cemetery that nobody's in the middle of the night,
sure,
it's just not accurate. Like if you set up a motion detector in like an actual Salem cemetery, it would be going off all the time, but not because anybody was up to anything bad, just because there's just people doing tours and stuff.
I'm sure 100,000 people descend upon Salem. Not residents, just tourists descend upon Salem in October every year.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so there's that motion detector. Why would somebody put that up there? We don't know. And then we go investigate the woods. And in the woods, we find a bowl of burned herbs, a fog machine, and a jack-o'-lantern on like this pulley system thing or something. But basically, it's clear from this that someone is like trying to fake a haunting, and maybe even the motion detector is like set up so that they know when people are there so that they can like set off this stuff.
Sure.
And our most likely suspect is, of course, Olivia, right? Because who would be interested in like, juicing up the ghosty aspects of this place? It's probably Olivia. So we go to her shop in the museum. And she's not there. It's like the middle of the night, right? So it's kind of implied that Frank and Joe break in, although we don't actually get to do that, which is disappointing. Like I would like to have to break into the shop, but we don't get to. We're just pop in there as Frank and Joe. And so once we get in there, we can look at like her counter. And on her counter, it's clear from like notes and like a book or something I think that she has, that she is very interested in Abigail Hathorne Woodley. And on her desk or her counter or whatever, she even has a map to her grave along with like this weird symbol code message that we're going to have to decode later. So then we go back to the graveyard with that little map to her grave. And if we find it, which it's not actually Abigail Hathorne Woodley's grave, it's just like somebody else's grave, but the map is to that grave where she has like a hidden cache of supplies, which we can uncover. And so I don't know why she says that it's a map to Abigail Hathorne Woodley's grave, except for the fact that she's obsessed with Abigail Hathorne Woodley, maybe kind of supposedly according to Frank and Joe. And so that's why, but whatever. So we find that stash of stuff. And inside of it, we find basically a bunch of ghost haunting supplies, right? And then also a decoder. And we can use this to decode that coded message that she had on the counter. And once we do, it turns out it's just like a list of chores. It's like do store inventory, restock the, spooky ghost candles or whatever. Yeah. Who would code a list of their their to-do list? Who would do that?
Nobody.
Anyway, but the very last thing on that list says, get stock from L. Could that be Lauren? Suddenly we're in the cemetery still, and suddenly we run into Olivia coming from the Hathorne house path. So maybe she was just at a meeting with Lauren, getting the stock, right? And then we, as Frank and Joe, confront her. Turns out she was just getting tea from Lauren, because of course that makes sense, because Lauren is like an herbalist, so she makes tea. And so they make it seem like it's like this big deal, but like Olivia's just picking up tea.
Yeah.
Like, she even shares it with Frank and Joe. She's like, yeah, it's good tea. You want some? Like, I have some in this thermos or whatever. And they sit in the cemetery and they have this tea. Okay, I have a question for you, Corey. Is this like an implied drug thing or a marijuana thing?
No, I think it's just a excuse to do the other drug.
Right.
The drugging.
I was thinking like when they were talking about it, it felt very like a euphemism
for let's go sit in the woods and smoke together.
Let's sit in the cemetery and smoke. Like that's what it felt like to me. And the way that they were talking about they didn't even say the word tea. Like, it took me a long time to figure out what they were even referencing. Like,
oh, okay.
And so at first I was like, wait a second. Is she saying that she just picked up, like, grass from Lauren? And she's like, yeah, it's great. Joe, do you want to try some? And Joe says, oh, yeah, I would love to, but Frank doesn't. He's not a leaf man or something. He says something like that. Or, like, he's not an herb guy. Or like something that was like, they're talking about weed.
That's very weird.
Yes.
It's weird for them to write that in there. Because I don't know why they'd be trying to, like, make that joke or imply that. I don't know.
Also, weed is legal in Massachusetts now, and I'm wondering if it was legal at the time that this happened, too. So it's very odd to me. Anyway.
This game is eaten up.
So they're drinking tea with Olivia in the cemetery. And then... Frank and Joe are like, hey, you've been haunting the cemetery, right? Like, you're setting up this fake situation or whatever. And Olivia is like, I mean, yeah.
Kind of what I do.
Of course I am. I'm like trying to like make it spooky for the tourists. I'm just trying to like stimulate people's imagination. She's like, it's not a crime to like do this or whatever. I checked.
I'm putting on a show, okay?
Right.
It's an experience.
But she does also say, that doesn't mean that I don't think that there are still real ghosts. I actually do think that the places here are actually haunted. And then Joe gets all pissed off. He's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't be faking a haunting and believe in hauntings, which is like, apparently not true, Joe. But it's interesting. But then suddenly, like, as they're arguing, everything starts to get like really spooky. And like they don't notice, but like Frank starts noticing stuff happening, right? Yeah. Like they start hearing things, and that same ghost that scared Nancy starts like popping up in places, and then suddenly like pops up very close to them and scares them all, gives them all big fright. Then we jump back to the Perry home, and it's Frank, Joe, and Olivia, and they're all kind of like frantically describing to Nancy what just happened at the cemetery, what they all saw. And it's weird because Olivia says that she saw a man, like a male ghost, whereas Frank and Joe are like very sure that no, it was a woman that we saw. It was very clearly like a woman dressed in like Puritan clothes. I don't know what you saw, right?
Weird.
Even though it was the same thing that they experienced. And then the next morning, we kind of just like all go to bed because like we were all excited or whatever. And then next morning, we're experiencing some interesting symptoms. Nancy talks about having pins and needles sensation in her hands. And then when we're sitting down at breakfast, Frank and Joe say the same thing. They also have pins and needles in their hands. Okay, we were drugged, right? Everybody was drugged and hallucinated these ghost visions, right?
Interesting.
And Deirdre realizes that the symptoms that we're experiencing, love Deirdre, thank you so much, Deirdre, is a symptom of ergot poisoning. And actually, there is a theory that this same herb, ergot, could have been played a role in some of the fervor of the witch trials because it actually causes hallucinations. So it's possible that ergot got into the Salem water supply, and so people actually experienced hallucinations and started seeing these, quote unquote satanic rituals, and that is what caused so many people to be accused at the time.
Interesting.
And that's why she realizes this, because she learned about that. So now that we think, okay, maybe we were poisoned with ergot, we need to ask everybody who's seen the ghost what they have eaten or consumed, right? And Joe and Frank are like, I don't know. We don't know what we've eaten. It's like, guys, you were literally all drinking tea when you experienced this. What do you mean you don't know? It's wild to me. But then when we go talk to Lauren in town, because Lauren's also seen the ghost, she tells us, she tells us that somebody had broken into her house a while ago and stolen her ergot.
Huh.
Okay. All right. And then when we go talk to Olivia, this is when we finally, because she mentions the tea, we realize, oh, okay, so everybody drank the tea that she got from Lauren's, which was made from Lauren's tap water, which would make sense as to why Lauren's been seeing the ghost forever, for like weeks or whatever. And then Nancy, who visited the cottage and then saw the ghost, doesn't explain how she saw the ghost before she got to Lauren's. But how she saw it after, and then Frank and Joe seeing it after they drank the tea made from Lauren's tap water, right? Okay. You want to take it?
Sure. So we get to the courthouse. Alicia isn't in her office, but we can look on her desk and see that there's a demolition order for the Hathorn house sitting there. She also has a map of the water line for the Hathorn house, like a map of where all the pipes are underground, and has noted that there's an access point by the carriage house where Lauren is living. Very interesting. So we talked to the judge, and actually Alicia's in his office right now. That's where she's been. So we talked to both of them, and they tell us that they are filing an order to have the Hathorn house handed over to the city by the end of the day so that they can turn it into a museum. So then what about that demolition order? That's very weird. And they also inform us that they have scheduled for May Perry to be arrested by the end of the day. So we have to review CCTV footage of the theft. So we go to look at this, but first we get a call from Carson, and he ends up confirming Alicia's alibi, that she was running errands at the time of the theft, but that means that Jason wasn't with her, like she told us that he was. I don't know if we said that previously.
Yeah, maybe I didn't. I thought I mentioned Jason saying that he was with Alicia, but maybe I didn't write that down.
So we'd learned this previously. Jason was like pulling a stump out of Alicia's backyard, which I think is also a euphemism. At the time of this,
doing some gardening.
So
some hoeing.
That doesn't undo Jason's alibi at all, but it definitely undoes Alicia's alibi. So interesting. But then we go look at the CCTV footage and we see that it was Jason that must have done it. It's like very clearly him. He comes in and we see his face. He goes to the bathroom where he changes clothes, and there's cameras in the bathroom for some reason, which feels very illegal. But he puts on like dark clothing, like he's going like a burglary outfit, and then goes to the evidence room, makes a mess of the place, and then comes out, gets into a car that's not the car that we saw him in previously, because he drives this like yellow car that's always sitting outside, and then he just leaves. And Deirdre says, "Hey, I've seen that car before. It's actually right outside right now." So they go look, and Jason is still standing outside, and he tells us that that's Alicia's car. So we try to get him to confess to the evidence room theft, and he will not give us anything. So we get an awkward phone call from Ned at this point that interrupts us, and Nancy tries to say, like, "Oh, we should go on vacation together. You know, Deirdre had this great idea that we should spend more time together." And he's like, "Oh, Deirdre's with you?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm working on this case, and Deirdre and the Hardy Boys are here." And he's like, wait, the Hardy Boys are there too. What do you mean? And she's like, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're just all working on the case." And he's like, "So Frank Hardy's there?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, the Hardy Boys. So Frank, but also Joe. Joe's here too." And he's like, "Oh, well, love you, bye." And then they just like really awkwardly hang up. Yeah. So that was weird. So let's go look into this water point access thing at the carriage house a little bit more. We go over there and it leads us to a weird patch of grass right next to the carriage house where Lauren is living. And we like mess with it a little bit. We see it's like this hatch that we can pull up, and like it just like gets us directly into the water line,
which is crazy. This doesn't have a lock. Like it's just completely open to anybody who wants to open it.
And clearly somebody has opened it and put ergot fungus in there, because we find the missing plant that had been stolen from Lauren's house. So somebody has just like left it there to seep into the water supply.
Well, not just somebody.
Alicia.
Right.
Yeah. So then we get another call from Tegan, and she tells us that May has run away. So how she knows that May is like missing as opposed to just like isn't there with her right now, that's not really clear. But then we get to the house, and Tegan tells us that when she got back home for lunch that day, May was just gone, hadn't left a note or anything. She had left her phone, I believe, and she tells us that she like read through May's text messages and everything and wasn't able to figure out where she is, but like knew that she was missing because of that. We do also see a newspaper that has arrived for today, and the front page article is a very detailed list of May's past crimes. She's graffitied things in the past. She shoplifted once, but it's heavily biased against her. Literally, they just printed her criminal record. Names her as the prime suspect in this arson case of the Hathorne house, and undoubtedly, this is the reason she has run away, because the newspaper in town is absolutely smearing her.
She's a minor.
Yeah, she's a minor. You're not supposed to like name minors in cases like this.
Well, Tegan also tells us later that she thought that she had May's record expunged, so she doesn't even know how people found out about this. But also, it's like, what newspaper would print the criminal history of a child?
Yeah,
like they should like lose whatever ability they have to print anything in the future if they did that. Right. That is messed up.
So, understandably, May was quite upset from this, or we can assume that that's what's happened here. So, now Tegan tells us that the reason that she thinks that May has been so weird about not giving an alibi is because she thinks that she's trying to protect Jason Janforth. She tells us that when she snooped through May's phone just then, she found that Jason had told her that he was in trouble, but didn't specify like why or like what kind of trouble. But May somehow knew that something was up with Jason and is trying to cover for him, and that's why she won't say where she was when the house caught on fire. So we tell Tegan that we suspect Lauren of having set the fire. And Tegan says, well, that can't be true because it was me. What? Hold on. Wait a minute. What? So we get the story out of her. Apparently, accidentally, she was in the house. She was looking for Francis as well. Why? We don't know. But she's looking for the house, or she's looking through the house, and she accidentally knocked over some paint cans and a candle. And the candle just ignited the paint fumes and caught the house on fire. And so she didn't want May to take the fall. So she thought that if she just did nothing, things would just blow over. And she didn't realize that May wouldn't give an alibi. And she's like, well, as soon as May alibis herself, this will be fine. And neither one of us will be held at fault here. But now that May is refusing to give this alibi, now we've got problems, obviously. Also, she thought it would jeopardize AW. So that's why she didn't tell anybody that this is like what she did.
Right.
And Deirdre like immediately lays into her for this, and she's furious, and she's just like, I can't believe you did this. And Tegan's like, well, if you would just find May, I'm so worried about her, I'll turn myself in. If you just find May, just promise me you'll find her, make sure she's okay. And Deirdre's like, you should just turn yourself in either way. Like, I can't believe you're hinging this off of like what happens to May. You need to turn yourself in. So Tegan agrees to this, and Deirdre is now in a horrible mood and kind of takes it out on Nancy for whatever reason. But we like leave the house with Deirdre to like go start looking for May, and Deirdre immediately starts insisting that we need to split up to look for her. So this is what we do. We go back into the house, we get her phone, and we start looking through the texts between her and Jason. Apparently just a few days ago, she'd asked him to meet her at the Hathorne house. Apparently they like to hang out there, which is not explained. I guess with Francis, I don't know if they're just like hanging out in her one bedroom, whatever. No, I'm kidding. But apparently when she asked him to hang out, he declined because apparently he has some past issue with the place, so couldn't meet her there. But then today she messaged him and says that she is going into hiding because of the article in the paper, and he says, I'm coming over, basically. And what do you know? He is outside of the Hathorne house, or of the Perry house, and he tells us that we need to go back wherever we came from.
Like we as in Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy. And he's not going to help us, but get in the car. We're going to the square. So he drives us to the town square. And while we're in his car, we find a plane ticket from Boston to Vienna. Hold on. Because we didn't know before, but clearly it's him, right? So he admits to stealing the book when we confront him. Alicia bought him a first-class plane ticket. Not just bought him the plane tickets, bought him a first-class plane ticket. And we're like, why would she do that, though? And he's like, I don't know. But yeah, he also confesses to stealing the AW evidence, which he would have had to have done in order to get the key to get the book. So that makes sense. He did give the AW evidence to Alicia, but not the book. That he gave to May. So, in order to find the book, we also have to find May. And he tells us, how perfect for the solution of this mystery. He tells us that May is probably under the underground, or she's probably in the underground tunnels. And we're like, hold on, underground tunnels? Those are the magic words. Tell us more. And he's like, he tells us the access point of how to get in there. And he says, hurry up because, like, obviously you need to find her, but it's raining. It's raining pretty hard at this point. We've had a storm roll in. The tunnels are not safe when it rains. So we have a ticking clock to find May here. So we need backup, obviously, because we're not going down into these tunnels alone, especially when it's dangerous.
Psh, why not? Any other Nancy Drew game, we definitely would have done that.
We definitely would have. Deirdre isn't answering the phone still, but Frank answers when we call. Of course he does.
First ring, baby.
He would do anything for us. Of course he would. So he tells us that he and Joe are going to meet us at the cemetery. But then Olivia drunk texts us. Not really. She's just like really excitable because she's had too much caffeine. And says, hey, meet me in my shop. So we go over to Olivia's shop and she gives us a photo to give to Tegan because she wants her to know that they used to be friends. Great. Okay. Weird. So we look at the photo, and it's a very young Olivia, Lauren, and Tegan. And then in the back, we see a very tiny little blonde person, which we conclude is young May. And that's it. This doesn't tell us anything. It just tells us that May was kind of around when the three of them were friends back in the day. Great. She also gives us a lantern that we can use in the tunnels. That's useful. So we head back to the cemetery. We have to open up, or we have to like put the lantern in the hand of the statue in the cemetery, and then that will open up the secret passage that Jason told us about, and then that allows us to get down into the tunnels. So basically, this statue of Abigail Hawthorne being beaten like moves automatically, and then there's just a tunnel underground to get into the underground tunnels. This is really weird. It's like puzzle after puzzle, so you have to like solve a puzzle to get through the tunnels, and then once you get there, you have to like find a different room and go back. It's really weird. But yeah, so we go down and we hear a noise behind this like wooden door that's in the tunnel. But the directions that Jason gave us down there tell us to go in a different direction. So Frank and Joe go to investigate that side while we go on the path that that Jason gave us. So then it changes, and we can now play again as Frank Hardy. Do you want to take this section?
Sure. So we are supposed to navigate through these tunnels somehow. I still don't know how we're supposed to do that. I had to look up a walkthrough because I don't get it. I don't know where we're supposed to find that information.
It's on Nancy's phone, right?
No, because it's different. It's different than like the east-west or left-right or whatever that. It's different than that's the first one. But when we're as like Frank and Joe, we're supposed to know which way to turn.
Yeah, they don't make that clear at all. You just have to figure it out. And you die, like the ghost will eat you if you turn the wrong way or whatever, and you have to start over, which is great.
Yeah. So great. But eventually, when we make it to the right place, we come up on this wooden door, and I think Joe or Frank hear something behind it, but we don't hear it. So I don't know. I think we're supposed to have heard something, and they're like spooked. They're like, "Oh my God, what's behind the door?" or whatever. And anyway, it's this big deal. But it turns out it's just Deirdre. Somehow she's on the other side of this door, and she says that she's being like crushed, and so we need to hurry up and unlock the door to go help her. Okay. And like right next to the door, there's like this table with like this weird circular key puzzle thing that we have to like fit all of the pieces together so that they're all locked together, and we can put that circle thing into the door to unlock the door.
It's so convoluted.
There are a lot of weird things in the Nancy Drew game history, a lot of weird puzzles that you're like, why is it like this? I don't know. We don't explain. There's like a piece of paper that kind of explains how the key works or how it's supposed to work. And I think Joe or Frank, say something like that it must have been so that the door couldn't be opened unless everybody who had a piece of the key was present.
But who?
And where is this door? And why?
We're under the Hawthorne house.
Wait, I know we learned that later, but it's like, why would a bunch of people would all have a separate part of this key to get into this door? Why?
Yeah. It's not like it's like a, yeah.
Well, it's deeply deep. Well, not deep. It's very slightly alluded to the fact that like the Salem witch trials, the people who were persecuted throughout the Salem witch trials were actual witches, and they had a coven, and they met under the Hawthorne house.
And so this was the witches' key?
That's my thought. Was this is where the coven met
under the judge's house? Makes perfect sense.
Well, because Abigail Hawthorne Woodley was like he like locked her under here.
Oh.
So this is a whole side note that we haven't really talked about. She was punished by her husband, the judge, who like locked her in a room in their house, and she was like never seen or heard from again.
Oh, great.
Yeah, okay. I think. Anyway, so when we like eventually open this door and get into this room, we understand that this is the room where Abigail was kept.
Oh, okay.
Under the Hawthorne house. But then it's like with her creepy doll house. But then it's like, why would there be weird keys down here into this room that access the tunnels underneath Salem.
And all the parts of the key are just directly next to the door that they unlock. They were
And
just left there.
Also the like the tunnels throughout Salem, don't forget, are all marked with the AW, which they try to say in the museum from like history or whatever that it was used by bootleggers and it actually stood for like another way, like AW, another way. But it's implied that no, it actually stands for Abigail Woodley, and that she made these tunnels or had these tunnels to help accused or persecuted witches escape, maybe. And or is it because she was a witch and they all, because clearly these tunnels predate the 20s, because
Right.
otherwise how would it be connected to the Hathorn house like this?
Right.
Unless they were involved in bootlegging in the 20s somehow. I don't know. There's just so many weird things that don't make sense. Anyway, God, where was I? We have to save Deirdre. A bookshelf fell on her leg or something and she can't get it off, so we pick that up off of her. And let's see. Oh yeah. So yeah, Deirdre tells us where we are, that we're in the underneath the Hathorn house, and that she came to the Hathorn house to look for the will, and then eventually found this room. And then on the floor in this room, there's like this like puzzle, like pressure plate puzzle thing, where we have to use Francis's note that Nancy found in the Hathorn house and a book that is also in this room, to solve it by like depressing certain plates on it in the correct order. And it's all set up to be essentially a puzzle based on the Wheel of the Year, Samhain, and all of the different pagan holidays or whatever. I think that the puzzles kind of fall in like two different camps for me on this game. And one of them, it's like it's so easy, it's almost not even a puzzle. And the other one is like it's so weird and random and not explained and unexplained. I don't really care or want to try to put any effort into solving it. And so I just look up a solution.
I also feel like they're all like, I mean, they did scatter them throughout the game. I feel like the bulk of them are just all stacked right here at the end, which is annoying because as soon as you finish one, you just have another puzzle right after that, and then another puzzle. I feel like the original 32, it's like throughout the mystery you're collecting other little side pieces of information that it's going to come back for the big master puzzle at the end. There's no like master puzzle. It's just like a series of puzzles that you have to solve right at the end, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. And like the way that like they would used to structure them would be that you get a puzzle, and usually that would allow you to like, once you solve that, that'll allow you to access like a new location or get like a new important clue that would lead you to somewhere else,
right?
Or show you something more interesting and exciting. So there was like a payoff,
right?
But instead, it's like there's like no puzzles, and then there's a bunch of puzzles, and then it's just the solution to the game. So it's like the game's over. So it's like, oh, okay, well, once we solve this particular floor puzzle, like a dollhouse comes up out of the center of it, which is like, how did Frances Tuttle do this and put her will in here? Or did it exist before and this is some kind of like something from Abigail Hathorn Woodley? And why is it so related weird to the pagan Wheel of the Year? And what, like, so it's like either Frances Tuttle was a witch and celebrated the Wheel of the Year, or Abigail Hathorn Woodley was a witch and, celebrated the Wheel of the Year. So who is it and which one? And we don't get any of these answers. But inside the dollhouse, which is also another puzzle box, by the way, we find the will. We find Frances as well. So
we also literally don't see how it gets there either, because we solve the Wheel of the Year puzzle and then the screen just goes black to a loading screen, and then when it finishes loading, we're back at the puzzle, but the dollhouse is just there in the center. So it's not like there was some like wall that it popped out of, or like a secret compartment in the floor that opened up. No, it's just it has appeared now, which is so bizarre. Which is the case with a lot of things in this game, where we just like are gonna go to do something, and instead of seeing where we're going, the screen is just black, and then
because they wouldn't animate it, because they didn't have time or couldn't.
Not that we need a cutscene for everything. It's very jarring. Again, everything's just so jagged and jarring. You just sort of like, oh, I'm here thrown all of a sudden, which is fine.
I would argue that at this point you really do need it, because after you've solved this puzzle, like, what do I get? Where's the payoff? Like, what am I solving? Like, what is the like, what is opening? Like, what is the function? What is the mechanics of this puzzle in this situation? We never learn. We don't see it. Like, it's wild.
Also, if you push the buttons in the floor in the wrong order, like, the house implodes. It makes the house fall down on you. So why is that also like this fail-safe?
Yeah. Like, when would you ever want the house to collapse if you unsuccessfully do the puzzle?
Right.
My gosh. Anyway, so we find Frances's will. We can't look at it, though, because we shift back into Nancy's perspective at this point. And she is just, I guess, essentially she's navigated through the tunnels without us. And we essentially get to the end of it where there is this room. This is clearly May's secret hangout. There's like cool art all over the walls and a bunch of clothes and like a bed and like a chair and stuff. So like she clearly spends a significant amount of time down here. And we see May just passed out on the floor of this room. So we like go over and shake her, I guess, and she wakes up and she complains of a headache. And so we say, oh, you must have a concussion. You must have fallen and hit your head. She never says that she remembers falling, or why she's like passed out on the floor. When I saw her for the first time, even this time, because it's been a while since I last played through, I was like, toxic fumes, like carbon monoxide poisoning. Like, we're in a tunnel underground. Like, we just talked about how it's not safe. So should we leave? Like, But no, I'm sure it's just a concussion. And so Nancy like goes and like sits her in the corner to recover. But there's a lot to take in this room. So like I said, we see May's art all over the walls because she's also an artist. We never talked about this. She's an artist. We don't talk about it ever in the game either. She does art. I think it's implied that she, some of the criminal stuff that she did in the past is,
her graffiti and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, graffiti art. But clearly it's something she's very passionate about. Jason has also like left encouraging sticky notes on everything in the wall, like everything, all the art that she's put up. So he's clearly very supportive of her art. There's also,
Aww.
I know, it's sweet. There's also an acceptance letter from Waverly, accepting May as an art student. Which is a nice little nod to previous games. I really appreciate that. Also in this room, there is a letter from Abigail Hathorne Woodley to Judge Samuel Sewall saying that he shouldn't dwell on his guilt, and instead of like writing this stupid book of apologies, he should like actually work to make it up to the families of the convicted, which is like, yeah.
You mean just writing down some names doesn't undo the atrocities? That's weird.
Oh my gosh. But also, like, why is this letter here? And also, it literally doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't do, we don't learn anything from this. It has no implications on the larger mystery. It doesn't have any implications on anything. It's just basically like Abigail Hathorne Woodley's opinion of Judge Sewall.
Great.
Why do we care?
Maybe to imply that she was here once.
But we already know that. Like, right. Joe and Frank already implied that.
Yeah.
So, and also, I guess that does imply that she's been all throughout these tunnels. So clearly she wasn't trapped. I don't get it. Anyway, also, behind a poster, we find another puzzle box, which once we solve, we find the Book of Apologies. Yay. I don't know why May couldn't have just told us where it was, because I thought Jason gave it to her, but maybe Jason just hid it down here in this thing and he didn't tell us where it was, even though we were literally talking to him before and he could have been like, oh yeah, it's in this weird puzzle box. Sorry, you kind of have to solve it. Anyway. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. After we find the Book of Apologies, we flash back to Frank, Joe, and Deirdre. They have made it out of the Hathorne house, and also we never talk about this, but someone in a black hoodie is watching them from the forest.
I always assumed that was Alicia, but like...
I did too, but I don't think she realizes this when we talk to her later, right? When we confront her later.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
But also, I thought it was so funny because it gave me such Pretty Little Liars flashback.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, oh my god, am I watching Pretty Little Liars? Am I playing a game based on Pretty Little Liars? Is that you in the forest? I guess it could be, because I don't know who else it would be.
That's who it is now. It's A.
The Nancy Drew universe and the Pretty Little Liars universe is the same.
Yes.
Anyway, Deirdre basically is adamant that they get this will to the judge by the end of the day, because, like, clock's a ticking, so they have to leave Nancy in the tunnels.
She'll be fine.
And then we flash back to Nancy, and they're still down there in that room, and the room's just flooding. Great, because of the rain, I guess. So we have to, like, flee the tunnels with May, who's still kind of, like, out of it and groggy from her concussion. We also see, like, flashes of the ghosts throughout this, like, escape, which is fun. And I guess we assume it's because the water has been poisoned. And so we are, like, seeing the ghosts because we're not drinking the water. We're just touching it, but...
That's enough,
I guess. So we make it to this room, and unfortunately May has also started to see the ghosts. Nancy thinks that it's impacting her a lot more because she has this open wound on her leg, and that maybe the ergot is, like, getting directly into her bloodstream that way or something.
Again, how did she get so injured?
This is weird, know. Anyway. I don't know.
They don't discuss the open wound until just this second.
Yeah. But she tells us that, like, no, she doesn't think that she's hallucinating. She tells us that she's, like, seen these ghosts before down here or something. And also she thinks that she's seeing them now because she's cursed for setting the shed on fire when she was 9. So, like, causing that fire when she was little. And she basically tells us the story of that accident, right? That she saw her sister Tegan and her friends Olivia and Lauren, who were meeting there at midnight to contact the Salem ghosts. This is the Tegan that called Olivia not a real witch. She was also participating in some witchy type things back in the day. Mm-hmm. Right. And basically, May was jealous of, like, their friendship, and because they didn't want her along because she was, like, Tegan's little sister, right? And so she just wanted to scare them, give them a little spook, right? And so she, like, goes into the shed to, like, hide there. That's how she ended up in that picture that was taken. She was hiding, even though she definitely wasn't hiding. She was just literally standing there. Whatever. But they leave and accidentally lock her in the shed. And on their way out of the shed, they knocked over a candle and didn't realize it. So it wasn't even May who set the shed on fire. It was literally Tegan, Olivia, and Lauren on accident knocking over a candle, which is like, okay, this is the second time you caused a massive fire from your carelessness, Tegan.
Why wouldn't they put the candles out before they leave? They're like, let's lock up and go. But leave the candles burning, and then they didn't ever, like, blame themselves for what happened that night?
No, they definitely do. And Tegan implies that that's why they're no longer friends, right? Because what ended up happening was May got seriously injured and also took the fall for this burning down of the shed. And none of them, not a single one of them, not Tegan, not Olivia or Lauren, spoke up to say, no, actually, it was us. Who are all older than her, who are all now adults and had many years to come forward about this, and could have come forward now to speak up for May. Not a single one of them is like, no, Tegan or May didn't set that fire. It was an accident. We did it. Not a single one of them. But so May, for some reason, has been, like, blaming herself for this. And so she's like, it's quite sad.
Very sad.
And Nancy kind of has to try to tell her that, like, no, like, you know, you were a child, like it was an accident, like it's not, you shouldn't like continue to blame yourself, and you also shouldn't continue to take the blame for other people's bad behavior, right? And also, okay, so this is so funny to me. At this point, we have to like search the room to try to find a way out. And there are like these tons of like AW symbols like written all over the place. They're like on like there's like these barrels in the room, and there's also like a bunch on the bricks. And that's probably a sign that there's like a way out in here, right? Because they marked the underground tunnels. As soon as we start to go touch some of like these symbols on the bricks or whatever, May will tell us that ever since her accident with the fire, she can sense when something bad is about to happen by pain in her scar on her face.
Okay, so then the Harry Potter universe, the Pretty Little Liars universe, and the Nancy Drew universe are all the
same. Listen, what? I'm sorry, whose idea was that? It's like, I know we want May to be a little bit psychic, but instead of like, you know, just seeing things or like, I don't know, getting some, she's going to have pain in her scar. Her facial scar. This is insanity. Okay, all right. Anyway, so yeah, so she's saying like, don't touch the bricks yet. And it's like, okay, so we don't until we hold this note that we find close to the candle in this room so that we can like see like some invisible ink that we reveal that tells us which brick to press. And then when we find the right brick, we don't actually open a secret passage. We actually find a feather, and we can use that with some other feathers that we find in that room to solve this panel into the wall. And then when we solve that little puzzle of this wall panel, and like put the feathers in the right shape, it opens an AW indentation in the wall where we can use the AW key that we luckily still have to open the wall and then escape. And also, when we come out in the bathroom of the courthouse.
Too good.
And as we're coming out of the bathroom of the courthouse, in comes Deirdre, Frank, and Joe coming to talk to the judge and Alicia, right? So we all go into Judge Danforth's office together and confront both him and Alicia. And we lay everything out. Basically everything that Alicia did, like the poisoning, the hiring of Jason to steal evidence, and stealing the Book of Apologies. And at first she kind of tries to like lawyer her way out of it. Like saying like, no, you don't have evidence. This is all circumstantial or whatever. But then she just gets too angry and like confesses.
Yeah. Great writing. Absolutely excellent writing. You're never going to get me, except I'm the one who did it. So, okay.
She gets so angry, and she says that the only reason why she did this is because she's just trying to make Salem a better place. And if the Hathorn house ends up going to the state or the city or whatever, it's unclear, then she can buy it and develop that land, you know,
into
for economic growth, Corey. Not for like her own money, not for her to earn money, but just for the Salem's growth.
Sure.
And we can also tell the judge about the will that we found and the Book of Apologies and berate him into making a good decision about who the house should go to. Like Nancy literally like yells at him and is like, you're a horrible judge, and you don't do any of the things that a good judge is supposed to do, and you should use your power for good, and this is what the Salem witch trials was all about bad judges making bad decisions, and you're acting just like a Salem witch trial judge and going after this girl with no evidence. And
great parallel, Nancy.
Yes. And then I believe, I don't actually know this for sure, that like based on what you tell him that he should do in that scene, it will affect the outcome of like,
I believe it does.
What actually happens. Yeah. So it's like basically you can either say that like the Book of Apologies is like correct or something, and that he should give it to the accused witches group, or that he should give it to Lauren, or that he should do both, but also like find some way to like honor the
give it to Lauren, but also erect a memorial at the place for the accused witches, or not for the accused witches, for the actual people that were accused as witches, not this group.
Yes,
I should say.
correct. Yes. Yeah. And so that's pretty much it. But then we have this like really weird, inane like party at the end of this game. It's very weird. Yeah, and so in my ending, this is where at this party is where you kind of learn what happened. And in my ending, Tegan gets community service, and we encourage Lauren, who now owns the house, to have a memorial outside of it for the AW group. Yeah.
Great.
So cool. Very cool. And then we like walk out, I guess to like leave, or maybe just to get some air. It's unclear. We call Ned. And then we get this very interesting phone conversation with him where we tell him that we want to go on vacation with him to Austria, because Nancy didn't get to enjoy it there when she was just there a few weeks ago or whatever. And we promise him that there won't be any cases this time.
So I don't know if that little call with Ned was supposed to be a teaser for Game 34 or not. I don't think so, because we don't have any sort of outro teaser for the next game type of thing. But for the longest time, before they officially announced that the next game is going to be set in Prague, everyone was speculating, oh, are we going back to Austria? And that's where Game 34 is going to be set. You know, there was just deliberation of whether or not that was supposed to be an intentional teaser for the next game, or if it just kind of left it open for like they're going to go and do that actual vacation, and then you'll find out what the mystery is for after that kind of thing, which clearly is the case.
I just find this such a stupid way to end the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's supposed to be like a like fun little like moment where we get all our resolution and where everything's copacetic now, but it feels like just such a letdown from when you get to the climax and you have your villain confrontation or whatever, and then it's just like there's nothing. If there's nothing else, why am I still playing this game? Like, where's my letter or my email or my phone call? Like, I just need that little wrap up. I don't need this. I don't need to say goodbye to these characters that I care zero about, or, like say bye to Olivia, who like it's just like, why?
Yeah, it was weird.
Like, if we truly needed like that, if we needed to animate a wrap up, then it could have just been like Frank and Joe giving Nancy a ride to the airport and they're talking about everything that just happened. Like,
sure,
we didn't need this, like, so that's the game.
And then we end with a very long list of credits that includes credits to both the current Her Interactive team and the team that started this game and then were fired before they could finish it. So they do credit, they credit initial Her Interactive game development team. And then at the end of that, we have our original game music come on and the old Her Interactive logo flash, and then Lonnie come on and say, "Dare to play," which was weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like, I mean, if you fired Lonnie, then, like, why are you still using her voice in any way? That seems like if she would have to have, like, an active contract with them for that, right?
Well, I mean, it's clearly just the audio recording from, like, 15 years ago.
Proprietary, maybe.
They've used it in every game. Like, that is just their logo, and that's the little animation that plays when the slogan, or not their logo, it's their slogan, and that's what plays when their logo comes up. So it's, I doubt that they've like had to repay her or anything for that, but like, should they have? I don't know. It just feels like, why not just have Brittany Cox re-record that line if you're going to use that line?
That's an interesting choice, though, because if fans really enjoy it and like that nostalgia, then why don't we just keep it?
Yeah, it's almost like we should have kept it. Well, anyway.
Okay. listen, I know we already talked a little bit about the animation and how bad it is. The people animation is just the worst people animation I've ever seen, including the animation from like the earlier Her Interactive games of like people. I'm not just talking about just other people. Like we've come so far and the people are worse.
Like, Stay Tuned for Danger looks better than this, with everyone rocking around like they desperately need the bathroom at all points of this game. And
Yes.
where they're just standing there, and then all of a sudden Joe's feet will sink into the floor, so he's just ankles up from the ground. And then if you look at Frank's feet, he disappears entirely, actually.
Oh, God.
And if you look at Deirdre, if you zoom in too close to Deirdre, her face will disappear, and it's just her teeth and eyeballs floating there.
Ah!
It's horrifying.
Oh, my God. So that's definitely bad. It's also, for me, the way that they walk around, because there are times when like Deirdre is like walking out and it's like it's like right when we get there, we get to the Perry house and she's like, hold on, walk, 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 walk. And it's so slow. And the way she moves her arms, walk, walk, walk. And then she stops and then she turns and then she'll talk to us, but not before then.
And then she gets to the stairs at the front of the house and she like walks up to the stairs and then is just like walking in place because the stairs are blocking her from moving forward. And then she just floats up and then onto the top of the ledge and then just walks into the house. It's great. Again, I'm not playing this game for the graphics, but like if you're going to advertise this as like being a really fancy graphic game, it's crazy. Yeah.
But so considering all of that, I will say that Frank and Joe in this game are the most attractive they've ever been to me.
Yeah, I could see that.
They animate them to be so hot in this game.
Well, when the what they're up against is whatever Joe was in Creature of Kapu Cave. Joe was the Creature of Kapu Cave, frankly, with his character model on that.
The eyes. Just the way that they put like the lids on the eyes in that game was so upsetting. So upsetting.
So when that's what you have to compare it to, sure. True. They do look pretty good.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
Deirdre looks worse than what we saw her in Alibi and Ashes.
Definitely looks
unfortunately.
Worse. Yeah. Which is sad. It's a sad day for Deirdre because she doesn't deserve that, man. No. She's like the best character here.
I loved her in this game. She was excellent.
Yeah, she really was. And if only the voice acting matched the model.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. That's the biggest issue that I had in this game, the playthrough. The glitching that I had was mostly the audio, in that whenever somebody was talking, it would, and especially at the beginning, things would like overlap. Like me as Nancy would talk over like Dr. Elizabeth Hurst or whatever, and she would talk over me, and I legitimately, if it weren't for the subtitles, I would have no concept of what anybody was actually saying.
And subtitles don't match up either. And sometimes they're wrong. They don't match what they're actually saying, and there's a ton of typos in them, which is great.
Yeah, they misspell Elizabeth Hurst's name like every other time. It's like either spelled with a U or it's spelled with an I. And Carson spells it with an I, but in the subtitles we spell it with a U, except for one time when we do spell it with an I. And then later Nancy in the phone context, I think, says it's spelled as an I. And it's like, this is just sloppy. It's just sloppy.
The whole game is sloppy.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say, yeah. So occasionally then throughout the rest of the game, my audio would glitch in that like it would not match. Like someone would start talking, like I would just hear something and their mouths wouldn't move and then their mouths would move later. And so it's just like, oh.
I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of fans have realized that if you call on your cell phone one of the characters that you're in person with, that person will turn to you and their mouth will start moving, but you hear them on the phone. Yeah. Because they're programmed to move their mouth whenever their voice is talking. So they will just funny. They will just, like, it's kind of creepy. They'll just...
I wish y'all could see what Corey just did. She like turned to me like she was like a big mouth bass and like opened her mouth like a fish. It was hilarious.
That's what they look like. They'll turn to Nancy and just start flapping their mouths while they're on a voice call or a phone call with Nancy or on the voicemail. Like, Deirdre will mouth out her voicemail message if she's in the room with you.
I mean, it's better than You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, but it's not that much better.
Yeah.
You know. I was trying to make a big mouth bass joke, but
that's okay.
You know the little animatronic.
Yeah. The flapping fish guy on the plaque.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's what they look like. Yeah. Or the T-poser. Sometimes you walk past the protesters. Yeah.
Well, for me, it would only happen whenever I would look out the window from inside the courthouse and see them.
So they're not animated when you're inside. They just stand there. Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. So glitchy, not good graphics. The plot definitely doesn't make sense. The setting doesn't make sense, to me, at least. That's why I think the art design is good.
I don't think you can compare it anywhere close to the original 32, which is what I'm always going to compare it to. So
yeah. Well, I mean, when you have a long series of games, you get 32 of these games, and then you get the 33rd, and it's entirely different, and it takes 4.5 years to get it. It's like, yeah, I'm expecting something good. And then when it doesn't hold a candle to some of the earliest games, it's like, what is going on over there?
Yeah.
Why, if we truly, like, this is the thing for me, is just like, it's clearly a game that needed so much more development. Like, so much more development. And I can see how if after, like, years more development, they could release a product that was decent. That is not going to be up to the standard of the previous games, but it's going to be a decent game. Like, I really wish they had just waited longer, that they had just taken more time. And I understand that Her Interactive was under incredible pressure from the fans at that point, but it was only because of the messaging that they put out surrounding the game.
Into that situation.
They put themselves in that position. They could have just been like, look, we really don't want to deliver a subpar game, and we're really sorry to disappoint fans, but we're going to need to take more time to develop this game, and unfortunately, we are going to have to indefinitely delay the release date.
Instead, they came out and promised a certain date. They promised 12 to 15 hours of gameplay time plus. They promised all these things, and then when it came out and it just obviously fell short of everything that they promised, they just started treating fans with utter contempt for having disliked the game. It was just very bizarre, their whole approach to it. And to be clear, I'm not throwing shade at any specific marketing person or any specific person on their team. I'm well aware that they are just following orders from up on high. To be clear, I'm criticizing Up on High. Penny, this is your fault. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So it's just disappointing. I just feel like there could have been many different choices made, that even if it didn't make a game that was one that we all liked and we're all fans of, could have been a good game or a decent game.
Even if they had just finished what they already had.
If they could have just finished, if they could have just made it so it didn't have these glitches, where the graphics were better rendered, where where, they could have just added some more details as far as the history and all of that stuff, then we maybe still would have been a little disappointed because it wasn't what we were originally fans of, but maybe we wouldn't have to be so hurt by the fact that because what it feels like is that they have taken something that we love, that is so sacred to us. We've spent, it's probably, 10 years probably playing those games to get this. What have you done? So it's, and I know a lot of people could be like, chill out, it's not that big of a deal, it's just a game, or it's just a game series, and I get it, and I understand, and I do, but it's just, I think it's just when you have just such a history of experiencing these games, it's really hard to see that just go away. It's just sad. It's just sad. It's just disappointing. But well.
It was very disappointing. I know that there's a lot of not a lot. I know that there are plenty of people who loved this game. I don't understand why, but if you loved it, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Me personally, it fell short in every possible aspect. From just like the events surrounding the release of the game to the game itself, everything was a disappointment to me.
Yeah. Well, do we have anything else we want to say about it, Corey?
No, I wish we could say less about it.
Yeah. Flashlight score?
Half of a flashlight. I think that's what this earns, in my opinion. I know you liked it better. What would you say?
Well, so I liked it better this playthrough.
Okay.
But I didn't like it because I felt like it did anything that good. I don't think. I think I liked it because it wasn't as painful as I expected it to be. Or like it didn't perform as poorly as it had for me in the past. So like if I didn't have as many glitches, I felt like it was actually playable. The navigation was a lot easier for me. But that didn't mean that I enjoyed the navigation, because I don't like the way that they have you navigate the environment. There were some bits that I saw that I liked and appreciated that I felt like were innovative, like these texting conversations. I didn't feel like they took that as far as they could. I didn't mind the new inventory. I didn't mind the new way to interact with clues and things in your inventory. I thought that was pretty good. And so I think there were things that they did that I think I liked, but I think ultimately across the whole game, it didn't have enough. This is going to sound weird, but like respect for the previous games. Like, I feel like if you're going to make an updated game of a game series that is well established, that is beloved, that you have to, when you're making serious updates, you have to do that with the previous games in mind. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of harken back to the way that it used to be for people who appreciated that and liked that. It's how you keep your old fans and gain new ones. That's how you do that. But I just felt like throughout the game, they were completely unsuccessful in doing that. Like almost none of the way that things operated in the previous games operated the same in this game. And it just felt unnecessary, some of it. And I felt like there really could have been ways that they could have taken the things that existed in the previous games and made them better. And it just seemed like changing things just to change things and not to actually improve them, which I'm not a fan of. So while there were things that I liked, I feel like ultimately it really was a failure. And so, yeah, I mean, a 1.
A 1? That's fair.
A 1. Yeah.
I like Brittany Cox. I miss Lonnie. I do very much miss Lonnie, but I understand that her time with the company is just over. She's not coming back. I do really like Brittany Cox. I can't say enough positive things about her, especially for her first game where she was given basically no acting direction, and it shows. That's not her fault by any means, but I do like her. I do like the fact that they included Deirdre and the Hardy Boys. Like I said, I feel like that was extremely necessary for it to feel anything remotely like a Nancy Drew game.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I like the concept. I like the idea that it's going to be in Salem about the Salem witch trials. Now, how that actually played out, I think they did a bad job of that. I hated that it was mostly dialogue, that it was all this exposition dumping, that it was like, we're going to give you like a fourth of the information, and then you're going to be confused about that until we sort of confirm something later on. Like, it just all felt like really jagged pieces of a puzzle that no one really wanted us to put together in the storyline. Again, the animation is not something that I look for when I'm playing a Nancy Drew game. I don't expect amazing graphics, but it was disappointing that everything was so glitchy and difficult. Like I said, I didn't like the new navigation style at all. It made me very, very sick. So
yeah, there's a group of people who, and I also am one of them, is like when you're in first person navigation in a lot of video games, it makes me so ill. I know it makes a bunch of people really ill because of the just the way that the camera moves. And so if it's a game that like Lance, my husband, is trying to get me to play, if it doesn't have a third person perspective option to play, I literally can't play it. Like I'll sit there, especially because the games he tries to get me to play are usually much more like combat or that kind of stuff. And so it's like you have to know what you're looking at, like for like aiming purposes or like whatever. It's I will get ill by trying to play that kind of game. And so I just like I'll try it for like 5 minutes and I just get too sick and I can't do it. But I didn't have that much of an issue with this game, but I know that a bunch of people did. So
the original 32, I never had anything close to an issue ever playing those. Like I never got motion sick with those. So
well, I mean, I know in like recent years it's been like an accessibility thing, right? Because a lot of people want to play these kinds of games, but just like can't do it because they get too sick.
Right.
And so there's like a good amount of people being like, can you please include an option to like limit how much, camera movement or if you could create like a third person perspective option to play, that really is helpful. But yeah. not just for Nancy Drew, but like for video games just and like their entirety, the whole community. So
one thing that I will give legitimate praise for, the previous games did not do, but in this, whenever you go to read like a passage of text or a book or something, it will have an accessibility feature where it will pop up with like another text box where the font is like a lot clearer, it's a lot bigger, it doesn't, it's not like in a weird script or anything like that. So that was one thing that I thought was a definite improvement. But otherwise, it just felt like they were trying to say, Nancy Drew games are only the sum of their parts. Let's break this down. What are those parts? How do we recreate those the cheapest way possible? Slap it together, call it a game.
To me, I'm just never going to get over the fact that they set a game in Salem and never had one single like witch in it, like a real character who's a witch. I mean, like I know like there's like Olivia, but Tegan says that she's not a witch and Olivia never says that she is one. And also like Lauren, who's like literally an herbalist and working from like Tituba's grimoire in her tea shop. She never comes out.
Her. Yeah.
She never comes out and says, "Oh yeah, I practice witchcraft."
Yeah. That would have been nice. We could have had like a little seance or something where we try to contact Abigail Woodley or, we could have done a lot with it.
We could have learned about paganism, learned a little bit more about the Wheel of the Year, which they reference in the game, or learned about, I don't know, the history of the Salem witch trials.
That doesn't feel relevant. That's old hat, right? Everybody knows about that. So
I'm just never going to get over it. Never going to get over the fact that they set a game in Salem and we don't learn about witches. I'm just not going to get over it. Yeah. So, okay. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode on Midnight in Salem, Regular Drews. Next time, Corey, for episode 70.
It's regular Nancy Drew in Salem. That's what it is.
Hell yeah! We are going to the convention. We mentioned this in the last episode, I believe, but the news has broken. We are out of here. We are going to Salem for the Haunted Salem Nancy Drew convention run by Jen Fisher, and we are very, very excited to take y'all along with us a little bit.
Yes, so hopefully we'll, obviously we haven't gone yet, but hopefully we will be recording lots of fun tidbits of that convention and we'll be able to share all the fun details with y'all.
Yeah. We even have some plans. I don't know. We may not actually get to do this, so maybe I shouldn't say or not, but we may go check out like a Paul Revere bell too.
It happens to be very convenient for our plans for the week, so.
So we might do that. Maybe we'll post about it on Instagram or something.
So, maybe we'll get to hear the bell. We can hear a real Paul Revere bell on the podcast. How cool.
My God, that would be insane. But so lots of exciting things coming up very soon. Keep your eyes and ears peeled.
It's going to be a very different episode in hopefully a very, very fun way. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Yes. Me too.
So definitely join us then.
Yes, and we will see you then, regular Drews.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
thanks for listening.